Hey, everybody. This is welcome to We've Got Issues. It is our regular get together amongst a group of friends who have known each other for more than 40 years. And we like to kind of bring you our observations from our group text thread and hope that what we're talking about is stuff that's going to be of interest to you, because typically it's about a lot of things that people are talking about anyway, but I think we bring our own unique take to it. So just for those of you who are just joining us for the first time or are new to it, I want to introduce our regular panel of experts, so to speak. We've got Ron Evans, who is back in the DZ, Virginia area. He's an LA native, like myself and Ella, but he's been back there for a couple of decades now and is a fintech executive, husband and father, been married for more than 30 years. So he brings that unique perspective to our conversations. And we've got Darren Gray, who is, as you see, a Detroit man, but has been here in LA. We all, the three of us, me, Ron, and Darren, met at USC. Darren is still an administrator and educator at USC and has been doing that kind of work for many, many, many years, and brings his unique, as you will see if you haven't joined us before, his very unique personality and perspective and take on the things that we're discussing. And of course, we've got our very own Ella Neely, LA's own Ella Neely, who is also a mother and an entrepreneur and a licensed contractor here in Los Angeles, and has also her own very unique look at the world. And my name is Nick Cates. I was a longtime television executive and investor, and now full-time realtor and entrepreneur. And we all bring what we have to the table to talk about certain topics. And today it is my joy to be able to bring the topic today. Each week, one of us brings a topic to discuss, and I am going to bring the topic today. You saw maybe at the top that the topic for today is you're loud wrong, meaning that sometimes in our confidence of what we know, we're actually masking for maybe some hidden ignorance or lack of understanding. So to give us a primer on what we're going to talk about, I'm going to play a quick clip, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Hey, Kelly from HR is actually out today for a family emergency. Should we just move the compliance meeting? No, don't worry about it. I mean, my aunt used to work in HR, so I could definitely run this meeting. Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I have a degree in business administration with a focus in human resources, but compliance is really complicated. No, trust me. I mean, my aunt would always talk about HR stuff, so I definitely got it. The Dunning-Kruger Effect. The what? The Dunning-Kruger Effect. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger identified an interesting cognitive bias for people tend to overinflate their expertise. It basically means the less someone knows about a topic, the more confident they feel about that topic. And the more you know about a topic, the less confident you feel because you actually know how much you don't know. It would be like if you asked your coworker here to explain space, and he said, oh yeah, I mean, the solar system, galaxies, black holes, I just went down a YouTube rabbit hole about it, so ask me anything. But if you asked an actual NASA scientist the same question, they'd probably say that space is a marvel, it's a mystery, and they don't have all the answers. And this is why real experts tend to not get listened to as much, because they understand the nuance. But that doesn't mean that confident people automatically don't know what they're talking about. It's just this weird effect that happens sometimes. All right, everybody, space meeting starting in 5. First topic, why the moon landing was staged.
All right, so we'll go from there. And the question I want to ask you guys about as it relates to this Dunning-Kruger effect, which again is like a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing, right? People with a little bit of knowledge about a thing can often present themselves as having, as being experts. And those who maybe have a lot of knowledge about it realize how little they don't know. So my question to the group for today is, what is an example of this? Maybe an embarrassing, maybe a painful, maybe a negative experience that you've had where this effect applied to you, and something that you thought you knew, only to painfully find out that you didn't know anything about it at all. So I will save my comments, and I will start. We'll do ladies first today.
No, Let a man go first.
I was like, no, don't start with me, please
No,
don't. Because Ella's always right, so it's hard
no,
for her to come.
let
Just kidding.
them go first.
Just
Go
kidding.
ahead, Darren. Okay.
Let me throw this out to the group. Was anyone familiar with this term, the Dunning-Kruger effect, previously?
No,
I wasn't. I wasn't.
Okay.
It was on a podcast.
I wasn't either. It was new to me. So all right. So since somebody's got to go. Darren, why don't you lead us off here?
Before I lead off, I'll irritate Ron by saying the presenter is an example of the Dunning-Kruger effect because she puts herself off as an expert. Sorry.
Okay, Darren. Okay.
This one to needle Ron first. So
thank you for that.
It took me a minute because I was going through like any of the things that I've been loud wrong about. It took me a minute to find something that I was publicly loud wrong, because I was privately loud wrong about a lot of stuff, but I don't necessarily share a whole lot.
Yeah, but don't just make this professional. I mean, whatever comes to mind.
Well, even personally,
like the most important thing.
Even personally, like you guys, as man, noticed over the last year that you found out stuff about me that you've known me for 40 years, and like, wow, that stuff, because I don't really share a whole lot. So, I sort of keep stuff to myself, except for in the podcast. But one thing that was strikingly embarrassing and painful was when my daughter was a teenager, and we were having this conversation about discipline. And, she was like, because I'm old school, corporal punishment. And she's like, well, that's actually abuse. And she was going through this. And I said, well, it may be that in this complex world, but, I got my standing, biblical standing, spare the rod and spoil the child. Mm-hmm. That's not in the Bible. And I was looking for it. And this is before Google. I was looking for it. And I realized
you could find
there was nothing. Right. And she's standing there waiting for me to show her. And it was terrible. The closest thing, I think it was something like, he who doesn't discipline his child doesn't love him, or something like that. There was something along that line, but spare the rod, spoil the child. I knew that was in the Bible. I was like, it's in Proverbs, and I can quote that. And then years later, she threw it right back in my face. You tried to prove to me that the Bible. So that was painful, embarrassing. And I started to question all of the things that I thought were in the Bible. I think it's closer to the Mandela effect. I think, the Mandela effect is, for so many people thought Mandela died in prison. And so there's this whole thing about things that we thought we knew that people swear is the case, but you look at it in reality and it's not. So, but yeah, that's my terribly embarrassing. It was painfully embarrassing too.
Yeah. You bring up a lot of things that in that one statement. One of them is the difference between beliefs and facts, right? Like a lot of things that we think are facts are really just closely held beliefs. And so it can be, a little bit confusing. Ron, what about you? Where does your mind go with this?
I think that I have a professional one that I really thought about, and it was 2010. Mm-hmm. And actually, the interview was in 2009. It was December of 2009, and I was hired by this large German software company. And the COO of the division I was in, he's like, look, these people don't know what they're doing. They have their head up their behind, and we need somebody to come in and just rattle the cage and get this place cleaned up. And I'm like, okay, got it, boss, or whatever. And that was the attitude I walked in with, is like I was the big chief coming in to figure out how these peasants needed to do their farming and their tilling. And what I learned very painfully is that they actually did know what they were doing, and listening to my COO was a very bad idea. And this came to a head when I did not make the horizontal relationships with my peer organizations because I held them in contempt, because it's like, well, you don't know anything because I know from our boss that you don't know anything. So I was very dismissive, very arrogant.
Ooh.
And that led to a catastrophic loss of a client. We won a very large deal with one of the 4 large telecom providers in North America. And we just had to migrate them from the incumbent's platform to our platform. And there was no communication, no collaboration between us and the development organization. And the night of the migration, we were done, and it was an all-nighter. It's like 7 or 8 in the morning. No, like 8 in the morning. And I'm packing up to go home because I'm tired. And I walk past our knock, and I start to see all these red lights flashing that there was a problem with capacity.
And knock.
Oh, I'm sorry, Network Operations Center, the central place that does monitoring. Thank you, Darren. Monitoring and alerting for the entire enterprise, mostly everything from data centers to networks, databases, applications, compute. And we saw the board going red with this customer. And it's like, holy crap, what happened? And that started a 36-hour straight bridge that I was on for, at least 36 hours before I took a nap. The client ended up firing us and rolling back to their incumbent. And one of the reasons is because I didn't partner with my peer who ran dev. Now, should the development organization done the appropriate load testing, where you simulate the capacity and you figure out what's going on? Yeah. But could I have been a better partner and said, hey, have you done any load testing here on the compute and the systems that I was responsible for? I didn't. I was arrogant. I didn't think about anything other than, well, my stuff is good, so I ain't worried. We ended up losing the client. And there was only 4 carriers at the time. I can say them: Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, and T-Mobile. So one of those we won, and we ended up having to roll back a multi-million-dollar deal because they went back to their original provider. And when I think about that engagement or at my time at that company, another embarrassing fact, and because of my hubris, is I worked there for 5 years in the early 2010s, I'll say. And to this day, I have only been in contact with one person. No one else am I in contact with. No one else is a friend, because I was just a jerk. And it was very painful to get those corporate lessons on humility. And I have literally no friends at that company to show for it. So that's what happened.
I don't know if that's so much a example of the Dunning-Kruger effect as you just being a knucklehead and just
Ron Evans
not being a team player,
Ron Evans.
Well, again, I thought that my COO had said they're idiots, and of course that means because you hired me, I must be the one that's right. I must be the subject matter expert across all domain, and I wasn't.
Right.
So it was definitely prideful. So that's how I tie it to the Dunning-Kruger.
Got you. We'll accept that answer.
Did you get fired?
No. The COO ended up being replaced because ultimately it was a massive deal and he didn't have his hands on what was going on. So he took the fall. The head of dev stayed. I stayed. And he took the fall, and they brought in a new person to replace him.
Well, that doesn't happen very often in corporate America, that someone is actually held accountable. But I would have thought he was waiting for you in the parking lot because
But Did they realize it was because of you, or was it because of you?
It wasn't because of me specifically. I would say it was shared blame, because if you're writing code to release to the world, you're supposed to be doing the testing, the QA, and the load testing. As an infrastructure person, I'm supposed to be also making sure there's ample capacity, but I won't know that if you're not doing the testing. Okay, once you're doing the testing, I can look at the board and say, okay, our CPU is at this with this many transactions, our bandwidth is at this, our latency, how long it takes to get something is at this. So it gets back to, if I were the person then that I am today, I would have said, hey, Ella, you run dev. Both of our bonuses are tied to this success. Let's make sure we nail this because we both win. Instead, I was playing the finite game of, I'm winning, you're losing, but the company lost.
Right. All right. Well, that's from the information technology genre. There's your Dunning-Kruger Effect story for today. So, Ella, have you come up with something, or shall I go?
I came up with something.
Perfect. Please do.
So it's professional, and oh wow. So I do construction, and I'm working on a project. Actually, this is recently. This is like in the last couple of weeks. I was working on a metal stud framing project, and I didn't pass inspection. And so I didn't pass inspection because the top. So when you think of framing, basically, you have, horizontal, you have vertical members, and they're held together by a horizontal member. And when you're dealing with steel, you have to, and it's on top of like a second story or something. So if it's on the first story, then if you're going to build a wall, you have to use what they call a slot track. And this is a track that gives you vibration. Like if there's an earthquake, then it's going to move. It's going to move with the building. If you don't use a slot track, then if there's movement of the building, then your walls might crack. So I didn't pass inspection. And so I didn't pass inspection that time because I didn't know. And so I didn't know, and I changed it. But then there was a second issue where I had to, again, put a wall up against the top on the third floor. And I didn't get enough information. And I just said, oh, okay, I'm just going to put a regular track on it. And then after I did it, I asked somebody, I said, so when do you use a slot track? And they said, anytime you put it like up against the roof or underneath a floor. I had spent all this money in these walls, and then I had to redo it all. So I had to redo it all, and then listen to all these guys. Like it was like I felt the embarrassment of like having to like do it with everybody looking at me, right? Because nobody really knew, because you had to kind of look up to see it, but I knew. And so then I was just like, I made a mistake. And I can't be embarrassed about it. I just got to change it. And then when I said, oh, okay, well, I can't have inspection because I need to redo this. I have to pay twice to get it done. And it was because I thought I knew, but I didn't know. And had I done the research, then I would have found out, and I wouldn't have wasted all that money. So that was my.
Do you think that you thought you knew, or you just didn't know? Like it sounded like when you first started out, you didn't know.
I didn't know, but I didn't get enough information. Like, so, and I should have known, like, for the reason that I got in trouble or I didn't pass the inspection was the reason why, because you have to make sure that you put the slot track underneath when you have like a roof. Well, I didn't know it was a roof, but underneath another structure. And so because I was putting it on underneath the roof, I should have realized that was another structure. And so once somebody said it to me in a language that I understood, that I was like, oh, okay. And so that was my recent faux pas, if you will. But it cost me money. And then I had to look at all these white boys look at me like, yeah, see, that's why you shouldn't be here. And so, the only woman, the only Black person, and then I have to redo 50 feet of wall.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't afford to be that one because of all those boxes you check. Your stuff's got to be straight the first time.
Wow. You gotta get the information. You can't be cocky, because the framer, he said, do I need to put slot track? And I was like, no.
Oh.
He asked me, and I said no.
And when he asked you, was that at the point where you weren't even familiar with slot track, or you knew a little bit about slot track? No, this was
after I had made the first mistake.
Okay.
And so he was doing it, and he was like, don't we put slot track? And I was like, no, we don't.
And then did he come back after and say anything to you after he had asked you?
After I said, oh, we have to redo it, then he said, I asked you. And then I said, yeah, that was my mistake. I mean, I ate it. I took responsibility. I paid for it, but it was, I didn't know. Yeah. Well, I knew I didn't have enough information. Once I made the first mistake, then I should have researched to understand when you use that slot track. And
so
then,
Ella, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And had I done that, then I would not have made the second mistake.
So Ella, if you could go back in time and have that guy ask you the same question again, would you respond differently, or how would you respond?
You know what? I guess I would have responded by saying, wait a minute, let me ask. Let me see if I need to use the slot track.
Well, why are you asking? Yeah.
Asked him, why are you asking me that? And so then he might have said, oh yeah, you need to put it. And then I would have asked him why he asked me that.
Yeah. Right. So the reason I asked that is because some of our friends are not curious because they are sure that they possess all of the information. So asking someone from another source is a level of humility that is uncomfortable in some quadrants of the screen.
Quadrants of the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was on mute.
But see, the thing is, I just thought I knew, and I didn't know. You know what I mean? So he asked me that, and I didn't even think I didn't have enough sense to say, oh, why are you asking me that? Had I done that instead of, I wasn't being cocky, but I was just like, oh, it was just in that situation. But no, I didn't know when you were supposed to use it.
Yeah, eating one set of money that you didn't need to spend wasn't enough. You need to do it twice to really get that. You know what? Maybe there's more to this than I really know.
Exactly. So
And in response, Ron, that there was a situation where I thought I knew, but I didn't know because the specs changed. I do a class on flying drones, and I checked the policy in December, and I was in compliance. But by the time July rolled around, the policy changed. So when they said you're out of compliance, I was like, no, I'm not. And then I looked at the policy change, and I was like, oh.
Exactly.
I was like, I got to check the policy the day before. And they were like, yes, you should. So,
yeah, I think, to your point, Ella, in my opinion, I think your story is getting even closer to, I think, what is behind the idea of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where you got a bit of information and that made you feel comfortable that you could answer for all situations like that, only to find out that there was more information to know.
Exactly.
And the pain came from having to pay or reduce your profitability because now you got to pay for that mistake,
and then I got to make the change in front of everybody.
Right. There's financial and social cost to, to doing this very public, thing. So,
so you hire a fall guy, a blonde, blue-eyed fall guy, and say, "This is my consultant. You're fired."
No, you don't do that. You
Right.
take responsibility and you make the change. You get the information.
I'm just fighting with you.
Right. And I think the goal there, to that point, to Ron's point, Darren's point, everybody's point, is that if you are self-reverential enough, it starts to really change how your outlook on everything that everything that you think right? Because, that example probably wasn't the only example in anyone's life, the ones that were shared already, where we walk around thinking that we've got something dialed in. And if someone were to ask us about it, we'd be like, yeah, so blah, 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 XYZ. Let me tell you what I think. Let me tell you what time it is, And in my, as you guys all know, I'm going through a personal, period, dark night of the soul, so to speak,
Is this about Lincoln Riley?
No, I've given up on that. So I'm, I let that be what it is. I turned him over to the universe.
You've gone through the 7 stages of grief on that
Absolutely.
one. Okay. Absolutely. You're in the acceptance.
I'm good. Acceptance. Absolutely. I've accepted that. So
my bad.
So there are a couple of, brief examples I'll give with the Dunning-Kruger effect. One is professional. I'll start there. And the other one is personal. The professional one is that I came up in entertainment, I had a pretty swift and smooth glide up to having some level of status in my career. And that came from basically a hard work ethic and kind of having a natural affinity for things like writing and visual effects and things of that nature. Anyway, so I'm working on this late night show, and I had never worked on a late night show before. It was called Vibe. And I was hired by the executive producer who came from Vibe after being the executive producer of the David Letterman show. So I couldn't think of anybody better to learn late night from than having, as a producer, having someone who's come from that. His work ethic was, listen, everything you saw on David Letterman looked like it was impromptu, but it was scripted and it was rehearsed, so that we rehearsed it so well that when you did it for real, it seemed like it was impromptu, or people improvise, within the space of what we were trying to achieve. So I took that as being like, okay, that's how you produce late night show segments. Well, eventually that guy got fired, and the host of the show, who I had been working with, got fired, and a new host came on, Sinbad, and a new executive producer. This is like, well into the run of the show. I took that same, walking around knowledge as being the way that things are produced, right? You rehearse with the talent, you make sure everybody's good. Well, Sinbad, bless his heart, because he's gone through some personal and health issues recently, so this is not to speak bad of him at all. But back at that time, Sinbad was a pretty hot commodity or whatever. And but that was not his way. His way was like, listen, it'll all work out. It'll all work out when we get on the stage. But I kept pressing, like before the shows, to say, hey, listen, we've got this bit, or we've got this whatever, and I'd love for us to be able to rehearse it with the talent, or go over the script at least, whatever. And he was always just like putting me off. So eventually my contract came up for renewal, and I'm thinking I'm going to walk into the line producer's office and get the big bonus or whatever, because I'm hot stuff. And she says, so listen, we're not renewing your contract because Sinbad doesn't think you're right for the show. And at that moment, I realized after all the clues, after all the hints that he had given me, that that's not how I'm going to do things. That I kept pressing because I thought that that's how things were done. Doesn't matter who the talent is. Doesn't matter who the new EP is. Doesn't matter all that other stuff. This is how you do things. And so, so I realized at that point that there are many ways of doing things. And actually, over the course of time, working with Sinbad, I saw the effects of not rehearsing versus rehearsing. You say rehearsing initially with the initial host who was not as skilled of a talent and needing lots of rehearsal, and that rehearsal being hit and miss because of maybe his lack of experience, but having great production behind him. It was hit and miss and didn't always work out. And then you have a talent that has much more experience and is probably theoretically a better talent who did not want to rehearse, and you get the same results, which are sometimes shoddy, right? And so I was so locked into what I was thinking about it that I wasn't aware of how to basically the game that everyone else was playing was that this show is going to get canceled anyway. So we're not going to put more work into it than we need to. Let's just have fun and do whatever. And I didn't realize that I was playing a different game than everybody else, and I was the first one to get bounced because I was playing a game that I thought everyone else was playing and I wasn't. So I got bounced. So that was the professional one where I thought I knew something and everyone else knew something different. And I come to find out at the end that was not the case. Let's turn that to the personal space. My walking around knowledge, it was that facts are more important than feelings, right? What the truth of something is, what happened, who said what, who did what, what time it occurred, was it good, was it bad, whatever, like that is more compelling than, and most people will sign up for trying to get to that place. That's more important than how someone feels about what happened. And that at a certain point, the feelings about what happened are more important than what actually happened. So until you can get to the feelings behind the event, the facts are irrelevant. And over the course of my whole life, pretty much until the present time, I've lived by that paradigm that eventually facts went out. Now, there are ways that facts went out in the end. You don't get to the moon without facts, right? No matter how people feel about it, right? But in personal relationships, I've come to realize, because it's cost me relationships, that facts are far less important than the feelings that people have around what happened. And until you can meet someone at their feelings, that the concept that people say, F your feelings, like, your feelings are irrelevant. What happened? How do we deal with what happened, right? That now I am reevaluating the value of feelings, because people cannot, and I'm probably sure I'm the same way, people do not get past their feelings to get to facts until their feelings are fully evaluated and validated and whatever. They don't have to be right. They don't have to be wrong. They just need to be validated. And so at the cost of relationships, I am now seeing that my closely held knowledge, because using rationality, right? And seeing how rationality can be very effective in many ways is often the least helpful in interpersonal relationships. So that's my example, both professionally and personally. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
So you learned empathy was important.
Yeah. I think yeah, and not even so much empathy, but just searching. I think searching more for feelings than facts. Like most people want to, or I did, I should say, I want to try and get down to the facts like as quickly as possible. Like let's skip over the feelings if possible and just get down to like whatever happens, so we can both walk away feeling like, like we have clarity about the thing. But you can't skip that out. Like the feelings are far more important. They're far more present. They're far more closely held than any facts that you can arrive at. And so that's what I learned is that I need to be able to feel more, right? Because I think that's important too. Like I often would disregard my own feelings about it. I would often try to keep equilibrium about things so that I didn't get too high or too low, right? But I think there's a value for yourself, whether you choose to react or not to react, but to feel your own feelings, like not disregard your own feelings, but not necessarily act on them. But you have to be able to feel, to your point, Ella, about empathy. You can't necessarily relate to somebody else if you can't understand what those feelings feel like yourself.
Mhm.
So, I'm trying to get more in touch with that.
I don't know if you need to be in touch with your own feelings to understand the importance of feelings for other people. Because I think I'm like you, but to a greater extreme where logic and rationale, essentially Mr. Spock from Star Trek or Data, that sort of is where I deal with my own personal, but I have learned the importance of feelings um, with respect to facts, where I don't know if they're more important, but I think sometimes they are a higher priority to get to the facts. I've noticed recently with some of the students that work for me, um, when they're having struggle getting their stuff done, I have to reach out to them and find out how they're doing as a human being, as opposed to why you haven't done your job. And it's far more effective, although it takes twice as long, right? Whereas before, it's like, here are the 5 things you're supposed to do. You didn't do them. Make sure you get them done by 3 o'clock, as opposed to, I want to take some time and find out how you're doing. And oh, it was exams. My mom was sick. There was all these things that have to happen. And then there's a second meeting of, you know, how are we doing on these tasks? So I don't know if it's like, because my deadlines are still my deadlines, right? So I wouldn't say the feelings are more important. I just think that they have to come first. And I think that's what I've started to see over time, whether it's dealing with my daughter or dealing with folks at work, is engaging them on their feelings before we get to the facts seems to be the order of things, the order of operations.
I agree with that. And one thing I'll just say, Ryan, I'll let you jump in. The reason why I'm thinking that getting in touch with your own feelings and knowing what it feels like to feel hurt or to feel in love or to feel disappointed or to feel euphoria, right? Like to really know what that's like gives you a better ability to connect with other people. It moves out of the head. It moves out of like the rational space, which is where I tend to be like, oh, I understand you're happy, or I understand you're upset. But to really understand what that feeling is like, so that you can now, from a more heart-centered place, be able to deal with it, and it's not an annoyance or just a stage that you have to get to. That's what I was trying to get at about understanding the feeling. But go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those rare moments of agreement between me and Darren, so I don't want to trip over it.
Mark the date.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know which management theorist said this, so I can't attribute it, but one management theorist said, before you could change their mind, you first must change their heart. And this is in the corporate setting. This is in anything where you cannot lead with facts. You have to explain, I need you to move from here to here, and here's what's in it for you. And there are a few emotional connections you can make if you actually spend the time listening to the person and understand, do they want more money? Do they want more time with their family? What have you? So I definitely agree that understanding people's emotions is extremely important, because it will explain the facts far clearer, and it'll make it easier to have the conversation. And I will say, in my personal life, I dealt with a variation of housing insecurity growing up. My father had large bouts of unemployment. And one of the first things we talked about with our financial advisor is, look, I got a degree in business. I understand assets and liabilities. Don't be talking about the house. It's not an asset. Yes, it's an asset. But for the conversation of retirement and how to move money around, do not talk about the house, the primary residence, because that is shelter. And I need to make sure that there's shelter there. And that is 1,000% emotional. And I understand low interest rates and the arbitrage between the S&P and an interest rate. I get it. It's emotional. I don't want to think about it because it is based on housing insecurity. And if the world goes to hell in a handbasket, we still have a roof over our head, which again is another emotional argument. Don't bother talking to me about facts, because in that narrow area, it's pure emotion, and you can't win, because that's how hardened I am about housing insecurity and making sure that my family will never go through some of the concerns about robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah. So as it relates to this Dunning-Kruger effect, and Ella, did you have anything more you wanted to add or questions, anything?
Well, I know this was great information. The thing when you're dealing with people is to understand what those things are, like that emotional, the shelter for you. And a lot of times people don't disclose this information. So it's like you're like it's like you can't have a conversation or really get down to understand what's needed if you don't know what the issues are. And so it's like you got to peel back those onion, the layers of that onion, and talk and really have candid conversations as to what's important to you. And a lot of times we don't feel like we want to be that open, or we want to be that vulnerable. And we have to be, in order to really have meaningful relationships where we understand each other.
Right.
And so that shelter thing is a really good example of that, because that's a pain. That's something that you live with, and you're not going to let go of that. And so we have to understand what it is in our relationships with people that they're not going to let go of, no matter how much you talk. It's the core of who they are. And that's some really good information.
And you know, Ella, I would say when I look at our boy Nick and his investment strategies, it's like, bruh, I understand, but no, I couldn't. I just couldn't. I gotta have something I can say, this is my dirt, and I'm not going to take out a second mortgage or a first mortgage or whatever. It would scare me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why Nick, on that one narrow point, Nick and I will never agree, because we look at this. He looks at it purely from a business standpoint, and he's 1,000% right.
Yeah.
I ain't trying to hear it because it's purely emotional to me.
You talking about like the home equity line and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Crazy talk. Crazy talk.
I hear you, man. Here's a buffer for that though, Ron. If you've got cash, which you do, having a roof over your head is never going to be a problem. Whether you own it or you rent it, you will always have a roof. But to your point, I don't have to talk you out of how you feel about it. If you feel your feelings are your feelings, you have to get through the day yourself. So whatever that affords you, I mean, by all means, you know.
Well, and the cash, I mean, I put it on the bed and I just roll around in it.
There's that Scrooge McDuck
song. Go Scrooge!
Yeah, I mean, that's what I want to do with the cash.
Right. The cash is for my personal relaxation, not for my living.
It's like a spa.
Right. It's like a pet, you know. But I think in what we've all said, the idea here is this Dunning-Kruger effect, and whether it was Ella with the construction, or it was Ron with his professional thing, or Darren with the drones and all the other stuff, or his daughter, is that it feels like the Dunning-Kruger effect is asking us or proposing to us to start every opportunity to expose your knowledge with a question. The question being, is it this way? Or do I really know all there is to know? Because to Ella's point really touched me greatly, because there was a direct, immediate response to not just once, but twice to not asking the question, like, do I really know all there is to know? And now, having experienced that, you want to apply that, in my opinion, to various areas of your life. Like, is what I'm seeing or what I think I know, is that really true? Is it really true? Right. And the better we can do that, the better we might be able to not go through that valley, that valley of death to get to the other side.
Yeah, but at what point then now are you second guessing everything that you say and you do? I mean, you have timelines, you got things, you can't double check every area of your professional or even your personal. At some point, I mean, there has to be a trade-off at some point where you just say, I'm fairly confident in this area, and so I'm going to proceed. So there's got to be some place. Otherwise, you get analysis paralysis. You're double checking everything all the time. And then imagine if you work in an organization like Ron, where you have multiple people who report to you. If each person has to double check and triple check all the way down the line, now your timeline is slipped because it's going to take people longer. So at what point do you draw that line and say, I'm fairly confident in what I know?
Yeah. I have two answers to that.
Where do you, okay.
And I'll be quick. There's two answers to it. One, it's a practice, right? So it's not something that you ever master. You're always doing it on some level. And two, you don't have to do it all the time, but where you encounter resistance or where there is something where there's an obstacle in the way, it could be the question could be, is that truly an obstacle? Or it's like, in other words, I need to wipe away the idea that there's an obstacle to doing that, because this is something I did get from Diary of a CEO. He called it pushing on paper walls. You've got a deadline. Somebody says, oh, you can't meet that deadline because it's going to take more than that deadline to get whatever it is to help you meet it. And you have to ask the question, but does it have to be that way? Couldn't we still get it done quicker than whatever? So there's one. And then the other side is like, when you are the obstacle, or people are like saying, whatever, and you're saying, no, it must be this way. It must be this way. You have to ask, okay, does it have to be that way? So it doesn't mean that you don't meet the deadline or you can't adjust it or whatever the case may be, but you're just humble enough to be circumspect or forceful enough to say, we can push through that. So that's my point. Ella, go ahead.
No, and I think that's a great answer. I just think that, I think Darren, he likes to be contrary, and he went to the extreme. I mean, there are some things that and you just got to push through. Like you said, you just got to do it. And if you have to change, then you have to change. But it's because there's some things I just didn't know about that particular thing. There's some things that when you're certain, not, you got to move forward no matter what.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my example, I'll say my last organization, I had 10 direct reports, and they all had their own domain they were responsible for, and also competency. And I would weigh some people's opinions more than others, but fundamentally, the lower you go in an organization, the more technical expertise they have or better have than the people up top, because they're still in there doing the technical things where people like me are like dealing with emails and PowerPoint and reports. So you have to hire the right people, trust that they know what they're talking about, but also most importantly, have a good BS detector. Because, if they are saying one thing and their batting average is bad because every time they say something, it's the wrong thing they say, well, you don't go to that person anymore. Maybe they no longer are with the company. But if you have people that are lower in the organization that should have more technical expertise than you, and the matter is technical, then as long as my BS detector is working well and they've got a track record of being right, I'm like, okay, not my way, your way, let's roll. Can we hit this date? We can? Good. I don't care how we get there as long as we get there by this date. So that it's humility to understand that I'm not the smartest person in the room, and to make sure that we listen to other voices.
Yeah. The other thing, go ahead.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead,
but you
Ellen.
might be the smartest, but you might not know everything. And so you have to hire people that know the things that you don't.
100%.
And then, like, you know, people will say something and where'd you get that information from? To, like, you know, understand, do fact checks. Because
Right,
a lot of people, oh yeah, I just, depending on their source of information will depend upon if I listen to it or not.
But
That's
if
real.
they are saying something that agrees with what you already think, you would not then double check, right?
Yes.
Right.
No,
No,
absolutely, I would.
where'd you get that from?
Yeah.
You said if they're saying something, you really can't trust what they're saying. But if what they're saying is agreement with your perception of how things should be done, do you then question that person?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yes.
where did you get that information from?
Yeah. Because they could be a butt kisser.
Yeah.
They could be a yes man or yes woman.
It could lead you to war in Iran.
Or Iraq. Absolutely.
$10 gas.
Right,
Okay,
right.
just because we see the world the same way doesn't mean that we both are right.
Yeah.
I need somebody that is giving me a dissenting opinion. I need a counter argument so that way my thesis is held up for examination.
But if that person's batting average is, I guess I'm not clear on how would you know if you're falling victim to the Dunning-Kruger? How would you know that, right? How do you know when to test your own theory in the speed at which our careers are going and getting stuff done? When do you stop and evaluate, and how often do you stop and evaluate?
I think it depends on the stakes. I don't think every decision has to be like, you know, put into a tumble dryer and you know, tumbled around, you know, for 5 minutes to come to a conclusion. But I think based on the stakes, you know, you want to do that and make sure that you're not confirmation biased, nor are you, you know, whatever the case may be. It's a practice. I don't think it can be 100%. And in support of your idea, Darren, the thing that people hate the most, or I think one of the things that rubs me the wrong way, is people like the perceived Democratic Party, where you're putting your finger in the wind on every topic to figure out which way the wind is blowing, to see what people are going to feel, as opposed to having a certain level of confidence that, you know what, I believe this, and I think this will serve the best number of people, and I can tell the story that would allow you to feel, you know, in connection with it, as opposed to trying to be somewhere in the middle where you don't make anyone mad, right? And so I think there is a time and a place to let your expertise or your closely held, you know, serious beliefs lead the way, and then be able to deal with the pushback that you may get. You know, that's my feeling.
I mean, there's an old adage where I never have enough time to do it right, but I always have time to do it over.
Yep.
And that's the problem. If we take a beat to make sure we're getting the information to do it right, we won't have to say, dang, I wish I had more information so I could have done it, but now I have to do it over.
Right. Well, you guys, we are, you know, almost an hour in, and I think we've had some really interesting things to say about this Dunning-Kruger effect. I think we all agree that I like that last quote that Ron said, which I think gets at the idea, right? You want to try and do it right the first time so that you don't have to do it again. But at the same time, you know, perfection is not something that we probably will experience in this lifetime. So it becomes a practice on how to best get there. So I appreciate you guys engaging on that topic. And my parting shot for today actually came up. I have these playlists on my, you know, in my phone of music, and I spend so much time listening, unlike Darren, listening to podcasts and things like that. You guys don't know, but off camera, Darren was expressing how much he does not like listening to podcasts. But
listen to ours.
So, yeah, exactly. This one, you know, being the
because
exception.
I'm on it and I'm right.
Right, exactly.
No, because I like listening to Ron.
He likes pissing Ron off is what he likes. But anyway, I said, I need to listen to more of the music that I have and stuff. And I came across a song that really I thought was from an artist that I don't know extremely well, but I did do some research on him. And just I was like, this guy gets it. And I don't listen to a lot of hip hop and stuff like that, but this guy gets it. So I'm going to play a quick clip of the song, then we'll come back and I'll tell you why I like him a lot. Hold on one sec. Let's get it. All right.
Welcome to the United Snakes, land of the thief, home of the slave. Grand Imperial Guard, where the dollar is sacred and proud. Let's do this real. Come on now. Smoke and mirrors, stripes and stars, stoning for the cross in the name of God. Bloodshed, genocide, rape and fraud, written to the pages of the law, good law. The cold continent latchkey child ran away one day and started acting foul. King of where the wild things are, daddy's proud, cause the Roman Empire done passed it down. Imported and tortured the workforce and never healed the wounds or shook the curse off. Now the grown-up Goliath nation holding open auditions for the part of David.
So that was
wow. Is he East Coast right or West Coast? Is he East Coast?
So this is what makes it so amazing. This cat's name is Brother Ali. Mm-hmm. Not only is he white, he's a white albino guy from Minnesota.
Interesting.
And he's Muslim. Okay,
he is Muslim.
He's Muslim. Well, he converted. His name is probably, I forget what his actual name is, but he goes by Brother Ali when he converted to Islam. And I think now he lives he and his wife and kids live in Saudi Arabia. This song is actually from 2008. This is an old song. I was introduced to this song. It's called "Welcome to the United Snakes," and I became aware of that song like listening to I think the Joy Reid show on MSNBC years back. And what's so clever about him and many of his songs? So he's very political. At the same time, he talks about personal things, relationships, et cetera, et cetera. He's probably had, I don't know, 10 independent albums, and each one has songs that one of the things I really like about him is that there's a musicality to the tracks. It's not just like beats and whatever, but there's guitars and there's a funk bass thing, and there's like all kinds of stuff happening musically that I think are interesting in his tracks, but also his lyrics are just like he's like Eminem times 10 as far as I'm concerned. But he's just he's a guy that I had that song in my playlist and it came up and I was like, oh yeah, Brother Ali. If you have a chance, I highly recommend you on your Spotify or whatever you use, check out some of his music. That song is called "Welcome to the United Snakes," and I think you can't go wrong. There's so much in his repertoire that is that's very interesting, and particularly in the times we live now. Now think of it. This is back in 2008 or 2006, maybe even when this song. It may have been earlier than that, like the early 2000s. And so he was talking about this stuff, way back then. And so yeah, Brother Ali is my parting shot. Check him out.
I'll check him out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that was my that was my offering to the universe for what's on my mind this week. I appreciate you guys joining in and offering your wisdom. And if you guys out there are thinking about these kinds of things or have feedback or comments, we love your comments and love to hear from you. We hope you will like and share this episode. Keep in mind that the podcast is called We've Got Issues, but it's available on Minefield Productions on YouTube. You can see the full episodes on Minefield Productions on YouTube. We've Got Issues. So again, thank you guys for being able to share your experiences, your joys, your pains, and if you guys feel the same, definitely stick with us and subscribe so we can always be in conversation. So until next time, guys, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on We've Got Issues.